Hi everyone and welcome. Today I will be exploring further the trending Tropical Nouveau styling by blending more common temperate blooms and prairie-grown garden flowers with tropical flowers and foliages from Hawaii. Representing my small town prairie roots and being a farmer, rancher, and florist has influenced my design style. To construct a blended look harmonious to my area, yet showcasing tropical blooms and my love of travel, the tropics, and Hawaiian-grown flowers. Hawaiian-grown tropical flowers fascinate me and captivate my attention like no other bloom. Seeing and designing with these outstanding varieties at AIFD Symposium and wholesale workshops and shows over the years started my obsession. Traveling to the Big Island and touring Greenpoint nurseries, seeing the abundant greenhouses full of anthurium, and then having the opportunity to visit Maui and tour the local growers with the Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association for wedding celebrations in 2019. Touring upcountry flower farmers on Maui, I was pleased to see that many of my favorite garden flowers from the prairies are also grown on protea farms. I spoke with the owners of Malolo Farm Protea, a mom and daughter, about their plans to expand for the protea's off-season. We spoke about climate, growing possibilities, and soil content, and what else they had been experimenting with. Blooms like zinnia, sunflowers, matricaria, Queen Anne's lace. Oh, just beautiful, beautiful flowers. Now more than ever, as destination travel is limited, we need to bring Hawaii to our customers. The chance to evoke the notion of being on a holiday and transport your bride and groom and their guests to the tropics right in their own backyard, perhaps at a small gathering or a wee wedding, is an outstanding opportunity for florists across Canada. The bridal bouquet I will be designing is in the blush and peach analogous color palette, a hand-tied bouquet using gathered branches and vines, combining the lush exotic Hawaiian-grown flowers with some of the wildflower temperate blooms commonly grown on the Saskatchewan prairies. Check out these stunning Hawaiian-grown Guzmania and anthuriums, Maui Bride and Nue Nue and Toyama, that will be the focal point of this bouquet. And of course, some Hawaiian-grown greens, Curly Luai, Monstera, and Calfea. Man, just incorporating these together with zinnia and astilbe, and textural elements like bunny tails and poppy pods and wheat grown on the prairies to create a design, a Tropical Nouveau inspired hand-tied bridal bouquet with the Saskatchewan prairie vibe. So the importance of including a personal item, the intimacy of a special memory, is showcased here with my mason jar ring structure. I'm going to show you a little bit how that works. A unique way for the bride to carry a little history walking down the aisle. Yet another authentic prairie element, keeping true to the culture of your surroundings. Just be creative and personal. Incorporate something interesting for your customer. And so here's a little tip. So these are just canning jar rings from mason jars. We all know about mason jars, and we all know that brides are still loving them, but here's just a little new element. So before we delve into the design, I want to show you this. Mason jar ring structure, and just take that mason jar ring and attach it to that main structure just with a little bit of bind wire. Always make sure that you have really good mechanics, twisting the bind wire around and interlocking it into the rest of the piece. Around to the main one, and make sure you're tying it off, looping it through the rest of the structure in a couple different binding points. Just always, like you're working with bind wire, you want to make sure everything is tight and secure. So here's the start of our beautiful bridal bouquet, using that mason jar structure, incorporating beautiful gathered foliage just from around your yard. You can forage, you can gather, or you can use product from your local wholesaler. So I've used some beautiful stems from right here, adding a little bit of softness with some eucalyptus into a hand-tied style. Some fabulous monstera leaves, of course from Hawaii. Just adds that extra wow factor into the base of the bouquet. We can always add in the texture elements of Curly Luai and the Calthea. But first I'm just going to create a nice structure of the greens and then insert my beautiful flowers into that. Trim off any extra foliage that's going to be below the surface so you have a nice clean insertion. And I'm just inserting those stems through the mason jar ring and getting a nice good binding point for the flowers. That beautiful bromeliad is going to remain the center point focus of the arrangement. Some beautiful BC grown disbuds. Add a little bit of depth into that bouquet. And of course, Maui Bride Anthurium. You can't beat that for a bride. It just is just the perfect color, just the perfect hue. And you can just see nature's paintbrush run through that. The graduation of color in that beautiful Anthurium is just stunning. So again, just inserting through all those gaps in that mason jar. You can put it in through sections where the mason jar ring have attached together or through the actual sealer ring itself. So depending on where you need the placement of those flowers. I like to design in groupings. When you have maybe a frugal bride that's just spending money on flowers, and they don't have a huge budget, you can make a huge impact with just a few stems. So you don't need as many as you might always want. You can be a little more frugal yourself. We're going to incorporate some spray roses, those temperate blooms. They remind me of flowers that grew in my grandma's garden. So those prairie gardens have gorgeous, gorgeous spray roses. So they just add that other little dimension and just nestling them in nice and tight to that monstera leaf. Flip that over and then you can add in your other anthuriums onto the other side, nestling those in amongst the greens that are local to your area. So choose whatever flower, whatever green that you would like to incorporate. On the prairies, you could have crabapple branches, branches off the maple tree, lilacs, any kind of greenery that you have around, and just blends that in to create a nice, unique look. So again, lots of different blooms, lots of different textures. Eucalyptus is continuing to be really what brides are still after, on the prairies especially. That might not be the case everywhere, but my brides on the prairies still love that. And the scent that wafts into the area, the scent that comes up to the bride in her face as she's walking down the aisle, she will just adore that. Inserting those through the mason jar structure, through those rings. You can slide them through. Just watch how that natural curve of that zinnia, and play on that. Use that in a spot where it's going to make sense in the bouquet. So finishing with the Calthea and the Curly Luai. That beautiful color. Again, keeping my groupings together, keeping a really strong, tight binding point in the center of the bouquet, and still showing off that precious piece that you have handcrafted for your bride, something special to her that you've incorporated and used as a structure. It doesn't have to be a mason jar ring. It can be pretty much anything that you can bind together and create and have that special memory, that special piece. I love the curly Luai against the zinnias. It's just that soft green against the soft peach of that zinnia. It's just a juxtaposition of color, something you would not expect. You know, a curly Luai tropical flower, tropical green from Hawaii with a common zinnia. You just don't see that, but it is easy to incorporate into a bridal bouquet. And look how that color is just perfect. So you can finish off your bouquet. You have a nice tight binding point. I'm going to trim off my stems. Just to make it a little easier to design with. And then you can overlay some soft draping foraged branches, vine-like, just to create a little bit of added texture, an added element. Tuck it around your blooms and overlay it over the top of the bouquet, creating just a slight cascade. Either way, a bit of a crescent-shaped bouquet. Trim off any extra branches that may be in your way, but just follows that natural flow of that greenery, sheltering the top of the bouquet. Beautiful color palette. So here's our finished piece. Here's our finished bridal bouquet with all the elements that we've incorporated, including the beautiful Hawaiian tropical anthuriums and our local Canadian grown and Saskatchewan prairie type flowers to create that prairie vibe. Lots of textural elements, lots of color graduation through that analogous color palette. To finish off the bouquet, simply bound with ribbon, tied off, and a beautiful trail of ribbon as the bride walks down the aisle that's blowing in the Saskatchewan wind and creates that finished prairie feel that's a tropical mix of temperates and tropical flowers for your bride. So the second design I've done for today is a garland style centerpiece that I have just started in the back and just simply gathered branches and stems together to make a branch structure of foraged branches and vines. Just find what's local in your area or use product from your wholesaler and create a garland centerpiece. I've just zip-tied those branches together, remembering your balance and having nice heavy stems to attach anything that you're going to make into that. Secondly, I've added an Oasis floral garland over through the top for the fresh floral pieces. And again, just at those binding points on those strong heavy stems, wrap that zip tie and get it nice and tight, and it's all one continuous piece. This can be a piece that you can use in multiple ways. So we're just going to go ahead and start adding in all the tropical greens. And again, you can just gather bunches together of all the different types of greenery and overlay them through the piece, weave them through the structure. This garland can be used and transported to multiple locations. Insert the stems into those bunches so you have good strong binding points again. Find good spots to attach those to and continue the flow all the way through the piece. And again, nice strong zip ties. Add those securely onto the design, your initial structure of those nice heavy greens. Once you get a nice little section together, you can start adding extra elements of your smaller types of greens and work in one section at a time. So if you want to overlay those other tropical greens into another spot, zip tie those together in quick groupings, find a branch to add those to. And fasten those on with your zip ties. This is still going to transport really well, and you can use this in multiple places. And then you can go ahead and start flowering. So we're going to be using lots of different types of blooms, Canadian growing, disc buds, and chrysanthemums. Of course, some of those beautiful spray roses that we used before. These types of roses remind me, like I said, of the flowers growing in my grandma's garden. So whether you get those from the wholesaler, whether you gather them from the garden, you can use whatever type of product you like. Today, mine is featuring Saskatchewan growing and wildflower looking flowers blended with the Hawaiian tropicals. So at this point in time, we can continue on, create those pieces in each of your oasis garlands, create nice little focal sections, and then we'll move on to the next section, and I'll be adding on some tropical greenery and some more tropical flowers. So before we move this product outside, before we finish the garland out on the scene, I want to show you this quick tip. So I'm going to be using water tubes to float the anthurium above the design once it's finished. So nice water tube, and this is the finished piece. So you're just going to take any type of foliage or grass, just shred it with your pin frog, is to loosen it up so it can easily wrap around your water tube. Have that prepped and ready to go. Your filled water vial, your water tube, and I've just actually taken a U-glue dash, cut it into smaller pieces. We can be economical, we don't need that much. You can peel that off, add it to your water tube. So if you press on one section, you can stretch that all the way around the top of the tube. Once you get a good adhere, and stretch it along so it goes all the way around the top of the vial. Do the second on the bottom as well, do it in the same fashion. Nice good seal on the tube, and just stretch that U-glue all the way around. So you have a couple of really good binding points for that grass. Again, any foliage will work, so you can use something foraged, you can use a tropical leaf, any kind of product. Get it started on that U-glue dash and just wrap it around the tube. Reminds me a little bit of a tiki torch, which is kind of bringing that island vibe when you're blending that in with a couple of different elements into your design. So a quick wrap, trim off that firm piece, the joining point of the leaf, and then just a little bit of bind wire. So you're also going to be attaching that to the garland with the bind wire. So remember to keep some extra length, a good twist, wrap it around again so you have a really good mechanic, and twist that off. Now I've just been holding the grasses, and we just want to have a good wrap all the way down the vial. And back up to the top to twist off. Then when you attach that into the garland, you have those tails to attach to, and put that into the structure anywhere where there's a good spot where you think you want to attach those anthurium or anything that you want to float through the top. Hides the water vial, nestle that in wherever you like, scattered throughout the vine. We're going to finish that outside. We're going to finish that on site. So we're going to move to that, and you'll be able to see the finished product. You'll see that we've moved the piece outside. So the garland created the structure with branches foraged from around the area. You'll see that I extended that to create a waterfall effect on the other side. So that was just a quick add-on piece. Again, just zip tied the branches together to the existing structure. Continued adding all the beautiful tropical foliages from Hawaii, adding in those in clusters and bunches throughout the design, finishing more of the flowering with all the Canadian grown blossoms and the flowers that remind me of our Saskatchewan prairies. So beautiful Queen Anne's lace and astilbe, more of the fantastic zinnias, button palms, commercial mums, and scabiosa. Scabiosa I can also grow in Saskatchewan, which is really kind of cool to incorporate those. Then all our textural elements of bunny tails, some wheat is scattered in through here, more grasses to create more drape and flow throughout the design. Final pieces were added on of the beautiful anthurium, some of them dancing with the water tubes that we created before, some of them added directly into that foam garland that we attached again with zip ties throughout the piece that cascade over the edge. I hope that you enjoy my take on designing with Hawaiian grown flowers and foliages, mingling with common Canadian grown blossoms and foraged finds with so much prairie influence. I hope that resonates with you. Don't be afraid to bring a new look, bring a new flower, a new element to your brides and everyday customers, creating interesting combinations, being real, being humble, staying inspired. It can take you so far. I want to thank Hitomi and Colin for hosting me on Bowen Island in beautiful BC, and the Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association for sharing aloha spirit through gorgeous flowers from the islands.